The first book of Adam and Eve. Chapter 1. The crystal sea. God commands Adam, expelled from Eden, to live in the cave of treasures. On the third day, God planted the garden in the east of the earth, on the border of the world eastward, beyond which, towards the sun rising, one finds nothing but water that encompasses the whole world and reaches to the borders of heaven. And to the north of the garden there is a sea of water, clear and pure to the taste, unlike anything else, so that through the cleanness thereof one may look into the depths of the earth. And when a man washes himself in it, he becomes clean of the cleanness thereof, and white of its whiteness, even if he were dark. And God created the sea of his own good pleasure, for he knew what would come of the man he would make, so that after he had left the garden, on account of his transgression, men should be born in the earth, and among them the righteous ones who will die, whose souls God will raise up at the last day, when all of them will return to their flesh, bathe in the water of that sea, and repent of their sins. But when God made Adam go out of the garden, he did not place him on the border of it northward. This was so that he and Eve would not be able to go near the sea of water, where they could wash themselves in it, be cleansed of their sins, erase the transgressions they had committed, and be no longer reminded of it in the thought of their punishment. As to the southern side of the garden, God did not want Adam to live there either, because when the wind blew from the north, it would bring him on the southern side the delicious smell of the trees of the garden. Wherefore God did not put Adam there. This was so that he would not be able to smell the sweet smell of the trees, forget his transgression, and find consolidation for what he had done by taking delight in the smell of the trees, and yet not be cleansed from his transgression. Again, also because God is merciful and of great pity, and governs all things in a way that he alone knows, he made our father Adam live in the western border of the garden, because on that side of the earth is very broad. And God commanded him to live there in a cave in a rock, the cave of treasures below the garden. Chapter 2. Adam and Eve faint when they leave the garden. God sends his word to encourage them. But when our father Adam and Eve went out of the garden, they walked the ground on their feet, not knowing they were walking. And when they came to the opening of the gate of the garden, and saw the broad earth spread before them, covered with stones large and small, and with sand, they feared and trembled, and fell on their faces, from the fear that came over them, and they were as dead. Because, whereas until this time they had been in the garden land, beautifully planted with all manner of trees, they now saw themselves in a strange land, which they knew not and had never seen. And because when they were in the garden, they were filled with grace of a bright nature, and they had not hearts turned towards earthly things. Therefore God had pity on them, and when he saw them fallen before the gate of the garden, he sent his word to our father Adam and Eve, and he raised them from their fallen state.